All right, AP Econ. Here we are, 2014. This is question number 1, which is the question that is half of your FRQ score. So what I would like you to do is to hit pause, write your way through this question, and then hit play to check your answer to see how you did. All right, so if we look at part A, it's asked you to draw a correctly labeled graph of aggregate demand and short-run aggregate supply in which you have the economy operating under full employment. So we are in a recession. I have drawn the economy in a recession. I have also labeled things how they asked me to. So they want the current output and price level as Y1 and PL respectively, and then the full output employment as YF. So again, we use all kinds of different notations. Just make sure that you are using the correct notation that they want you to do here so that you make sure you get all your points. Okay, so everyone should have gotten that. That should have been an easy 2 points. Let's go on to the next part. So the United States increases spending on goods and services by $100 billion. So government spending increases by $100 billion, which is financed through borrowing. So how will this affect each of the following? So the first is cyclical unemployment. Cyclical unemployment will decrease because cyclical unemployment is the unemployment that's based on a recession. So if the government's going out there and spending $100 billion, we can basically assume that this is going to increase aggregate demand, which will move us like out of that sort of recessionary gap, right? So we're going to move up. So we should see cyclical unemployment go down. In terms of part 2, though, for the natural rate of unemployment, we're not going to see any shift. Remember that the only things that can shift the natural rate of unemployment are drastic changes in like your land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship, like everybody dies, like those sorts of things, right? So it's going to be really, really hard to change the natural rate of unemployment. So we're not going to see much of that happen. For part C, this is where you got to do the math again, and we do not like it, but we're going to get through it. So the marginal propensity to consume is 0.75. What's the maximum possible change in real GDP that we could get because of this $100 billion? So again, they've given you your MPC, but what you really need is the MPS. So because you're clever, you've done your subtraction, you've already done this thing. So 1 over MPS is going to be your multiplier. So 1 over 0.5 or 0.25, which is 4. So 4 times 100 billion is going to equal 400 billion is your answer. So this is the maximum change that we could see in the economy as it multiplies through after the government spends that initial 100 billion. So for part D, they want us to explain what is going to happen to the loanable funds market. So you draw your loanable funds market in equilibrium, and then you shift the demand, because what we've seen is the government has borrowed, $100 billion. That's going to take a lot of money, to do. So we're going to see a huge increase in demand. So what has happened is the real interest rate has increased. So you should be showing that the real interest rate has increased because of this, and the quantity of loanable funds has also increased. So based on this change, what's going to happen to the long-run economic growth rate? You should say that it's probably going to slow down, because while the government initially spent this $100 billion, what's going to happen is that private industry is not going to spend any more money. The interest rate has driven up, and so if you are a company, you're not going to expand, you're not going to produce capital stock, etc., because you're going to wait for the interest rate to go back down. So we're going to see investment decrease, which will slow down economic growth, because that's part of that C plus I plus G plus net exports that is our GDP. All right, so let's look at part F. So the question is, instead of financing by the $100 billion increase in government spending, what they did instead is they increased taxes. So will this equal, or what they did with it, right? So will this equal increase in government spending and taxes? What will happen? And so this is basically just making sure that you understand the multipliers. So because the taxation multiplier is less than the spending multiplier, you would say that basically we would still have an increase in real GDP. However, it would be slower than it would be if there was just the government spending, because that multiplier of the taxation is less than the multiplier of the spending. Okay, so hopefully you got all your points there. If you have any questions about any of these elements, please come talk to me. The main thing is, do you know how to do the graphs? Do you know how to do the multipliers? if you can work your way through the graphs and the multipliers, you've got this. You've got all the points on something that's worth half of your score. As we look at the other two questions for 2014 in a minute, you'll see that like having all your points here like helps you. One, like if you want your 5, it'll get you your 5. But two, like if you struggle a little bit in remembering some of those other elements, having this AD stuff down like super good is going to help you in the long run. All right, so come talk to me if you have questions.